I just wanted to know what it was like working with your nemesis, Snowball, working with Roddy McDowall.
Oh, God. What a delight as a human being. Roddy McDowall was the quintessential gentleman.
What a sweet man.
He showed up to the sessions in a tweed sport coat, perfectly pressed white shirt, and an ascot tie. He was old Hollywood in every best sense of that word.
Yeah.
He was on time. He was delightful. I never got the impression from. Now this is a man who was known for throwing parties on this Malibu deck. I mean, if you go on YouTube, go Roddy McDowall home movies. You'll see Jane Fonda in a bikini on his Malibu deck, getting a foot rub from John Philip Law. I mean, it was like, just...
Sounds like Saturday at Rob's house.
Yeah. and so he was, Hollywood royalty, and I never got a sense for a second that he felt like he was slumming by doing a cartoon.
No.
He was delighted to be there. The work was as real and important to him as the film of the Welsh Riding Down. How he was by Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, he treated it with the same professionalism, and he grew to love Snowball. I mean,
Totally. And you know what?
He loved it. We developed like a very bantery relationship behind it.
He was fantastic.
He never went off into his trailer or anything like that. He hung out with us.
He did, and he answered all my questions, and I said, "My God," because he still hung out with Elizabeth Taylor. And it was like, what's it like? What's it like to do Planet of the Apes? And he could not. I'm so glad you asked that question. He could not have been more dear. And he was also very ill with cancer.
Yeah.
When we were working with him, and I mean, most as professional, this guy never missed a beat. He was absolutely the most gentle, sweet soul. Never let anybody know he wasn't feeling good. Showed up, laughed, answered all of our questions, and I mean, it's one of the thrills of my life to be able to work with Roddy McDowall. And he was a gerbil! How cool was that?
That's so sad.
Oh, was he
felt like I lost a friend.
Yeah. But thank you for asking. That was a wonderful question. Thank you.
The story is told, though who can say if it be true, of a clan of medieval warriors awoken in modern-day Manhattan, of the animated series that told their story.
It is an age of darkness. Superstition and the sword rule. It is an age of fear. It is the age of gargoyles.
Welcome to Voices from the Eyrie, a Gargoyles podcast.
Welcome back, Gargoyles fans, to another episode of Voices from the Eyrie, a Gargoyles podcast. I am the co-host, Greg Bashansky, and joining me as usual is my partner in crime, my co-host, Jennifer L. Anderson.
Hello, everyone.
And rejoining us as always is the creator of Gargoyles, the supervising producer of the first two seasons, Mr. Greg Wiseman.
Hi.
How are you today, Greg?
I'm good. I'm very good.
Glad to hear that. And also rejoining us, we're always happy to have him, the voice director for every episode of Gargoyles, Mr. Jamie Thomason.
Hello.
And we're pleased to introduce you to the show for the first time. He's writing a book about someone we're going to be talking about tonight, Mr. Sam Bernstein.
Hello. Very nice to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to finally meet you. Your name is a name I've heard from these other people throughout the years many times.
Really?
Why? Really good stuff. Not reluctant good stuff.
Well, why?
We'll talk about that shortly. In the meantime, before we get started, a little bit of somber news we need to report. Unfortunately, very recently, Peter Morwood, who co-wrote The Hound of Ulster and Ailment by Moonlight, passed away. And we had him on to discuss The Hound of Ulster, and he was just terrific.
Yeah, he's quite a character.
He really was. I worked with him through Bryn Chandler Reeves and Michael Reeves, so I'd never actually met him before we did the podcast. So I'm really glad that we had him on and got to talk to him. Did great work on the show on those two episodes with Diane, and I was really sorry to hear about his passing.
Yeah. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah. So we hope Diane is doing as well as she can be doing. We send our love and our respect to her and their family and friends. And as for one thing we can say about Peter, which was surprising, which these other people here will get, that is impressive about him, he out-talked Mr. Wiseman.
What?
Shut him down.
I had laryngitis or something. There was something.
Go listen to our Hound of Oster podcast if you want to bear witness.
He was very funny. He really kept it lively.
Really very shy.
All right, so Peter, thank you. All right, so Sam, this is your first time on the show, and we'd like to get to know you a little bit. Like I was saying, I've heard your name a few times from these other fine people over the years. So, how did you come to know them? And tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm a writer, and I live in Portugal now, so I'm coming to you over the Atlantic.
Cool.
I know Greg from years ago. We started writing together to do some live action stuff, and then I worked with Greg on a TV project called Witch, doing a season of that, and we've stayed friends over the years. And I've been doing books more lately. Well, that's not true because I had the third season of a show called After Forever that I'm the co-EP on that is premiering this year. And but I've been working a lot on books. And should I say what book that we're talking about?
Well, talk about the first two before you get to the third. Build the thing.
Build the thing. Yeah. Okay. So the book that came out last summer was called Starring Joan Crawford. What I need to look up to my own poster to see what the hell the subtitle is. The Films, the Fantasy, and the Modern Relevance of a Silver Screen Icon. And it's really a look at her work. Not, whether she was a good mother or not. I think it's safe to assume that she was not the mother of the year. But she did a whole lot of interesting things that were very much a part of defining American culture in a lot of ways. And then, as you see from the poster to my left, I have a book coming out this summer. The end of August, really. So it's really coming out around Labor Day. Cesar Romero, The Joker is Wild, the very first biography of Cesar Romero.
The first? No one's done a biography of him?
Yep.
That's exactly what I said too. Like, what?
Amazing.
And that was part of how I sold the book. Is I was like, look, no one's ever done this, and all you got to do is put the Joker on the front of a book, and people are going to buy that. They may not read it, but they'll buy it.
You can judge a book by its cover sometimes.
You can sell a book by its cover. You may not be able to judge it, but you can sell it.
That's awesome. So then
that leads to
book. There's a third book.
Oh, and so now, okay, all right. Well, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to wait for a lead-in. All right. So the book that
was there a third book?
working on now is about Roddy McDowell. And another one who's never had a bio.
That's impossible.
It is.
What the heck? What?
Yeah, never had a bio. So, and that's when he was, he really started acting when he was about 7. And I've seen some of his films that are only available at the British Film Institute from when he was a very little child. And, he worked from the time he was about 7 years old until he was packing them in at Madison Square Garden, 5,000 people per show of Christmas Carol in the January of the year he died, in 1998. So from 1936 to 1998, he worked pretty much every day of his
nonstop, yeah.
There was actually a press release from 1943 from Fox bragging about the fact that he had been working for 110 straight days on 3 different movies back to back, and that he'd made a new record, beating his co-star in Son of Fury, which is Tyrone Power, whose record was 82 days when he was on a movie called Blood and Sand. And I'm like, so they thought that telling the world that they were working a child for 110, that was good publicity. That was great. Everyone's going to go, that's great. You know, the world wasn't that different in the 1940s. I'm sure a lot of people were like, Jesus
I'm sure when that press release came out, the internet just blew up about it.
I'm sure that it did. It blew up so much that it stayed blown up for another 50 years. But yeah.
Wow. But no, yeah, he was an interesting fellow. I did a little bit of research on him today. Famously, he was Cornelius, and
see that's what, like, immediately when you say his name, the first thing I think of is.
But
Cornelius.
he wasn't just Cornelius; he was also Caesar, and he
was Caesar and Cleopatra.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, he was the ape Caesar.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
The apes and and then but he was Caesar Augustus and.
Yeah, he was Octavius.
Octavius, yeah.
Which who becomes Caesar Augustus when he's when he's crowned, when he becomes Miss America.
He was in The Greatest Story Ever Told. Like, I'm trying to think, like,
oh my God, is that a slog? You know, I have to watch all of these things, and it's like, Jesus. I don't mean Jesus.
You're just telling this greatest story ever told in the most boring way that you can.
Oh my God, with every famous person you've ever seen, and you're kind of going, wait, was that Yvonne Carlo? I think she had a line. Wait. There's just, everyone's famous. It's like Love Boat.
Was he on that
Pretty
too?
sure he was on that too.
Oh,
he was on
absolutely. He was on Love
sure.
Boat several times.
Love American Style.
Yes. Love American Style, Heart to Heart, Charlie's Angels, all of them. Believe
That's
me.
Awesome.
I think Jamie's frozen.
Well, you know, we all asked for a miracle.
There he is.
Yeah. He was also the voice of the Mad Hatter on Batman the Animated Series.
He was. And he was the bookworm on the regular show.
Right, yeah.
First one, he was the bookworm. And he actually, Two Worlds Collide, Prince Philip was coming over from Great Britain and was visiting the Fox lot and wanted to meet the Joker. And as it was, they were doing the Bookworm episode. So Roddy McDowall and Cesar Romero met Prince Philip on the 20th Century Fox lot in 1967. And you're just like, in what universe is Prince Philip with the Joker and the book? Like, wait, what? And which of them is fictional? You know, of the 3, who is the most fictional?
Funny. That's funny.
That is awesome. And hey, I know he broke out here in this country for starring in How Green Is My Valley, and that's the other thing it's best known for. The thing it's unfortunately best known for is preventing Orson Welles from winning an Oscar.
Well, you know, yeah.
William Randolph Hearst, I know.
Yeah.
Didn't like Citizen Kane.
You know, it's funny though. I mean, there are aspects of How Green Was My Valley that have not aged well, such as the fact that no one is Welsh in the movie except one guy, and he's the only one that has a decent Welsh accent, and everyone else is like Irish or fake British or whatever. But Roddy's performance, which Maureen O'Hara called the finest performance by a child in the history of film, I think really does measure up that way. You just watch him and it's incredible what this child was able to do.
Fascinating. Yeah, we'll talk about him again throughout this. We're gonna
definitely an icon.
Yeah, definitely.
And by the way, he's in this episode of Gargoyles.
Yeah, he is.
That's why I'm here.
That's the best transition we could have gotten. We're going to be talking about this episode, the New Olympians, which I believe has some pretty unique origins as far as this series goes. I remember the time, and I'll talk more about this later. This seemed pretty out of left field at the time. We're about 50 or so episodes into the series as a whole, and we get this entire new concept. Jen, do you remember your thoughts?
I'm confused in why you think this is out of left field, because all we've been doing is hopping all over the globe, looking at new mythologies that are actually in existence that we all thought were myths, but they're actually real. And we come across a whole damn island full of Greek mythology. And you're like, where did this come from?
I guess because, and granted, you know what? People can speak without knowing what they're talking about. That actually happens quite a lot in the series. But we were told about 3 races: gargoyles, humans, no bronze children, and we have this 4th race here from the looks of it. And at the time, I was thinking, what is this? Of course, looking back, I should have said, okay, Hudson and Broadway and co. were clearly misinformed when they said that. I mean, dragons later, of course, too. But
Well, I mean, having watched the episode just this week, I can say that to me it seemed clearly that it was from the land of the backdoor pilot.
I mean, that final line.
yes.
Wow, there it is. Bam.
I mean, I was watching it going, okay, where's the show, The New Olympians? Where is it? See it. I want to see it. Where's the show?
Why wasn't there one, Ray?
For that.
Well, there are a lot of reasons, but the main one was that, we had been sort of asked by Michael Eisner to use gargoyles to create an action universe for the Disney company. But by the time these things actually got on the air, Eisner had sort of, under pressure, kicked himself upstairs. Jeffrey Katzenberg had left, Rich Frank had left, Gary Kreisel had left, Bruce Cranston had left. All the executives who were sort of in our corner and were part of that discussion about making this action universe, they were all gone. And the people who replaced them were fundamentally less interested in building an action universe, A, and using gargoyles to do that, B. And then ABC took gargoyles and turned it into the Goliath Chronicles for a season for their Saturday morning, and they watered it down and they used a different creative staff. And pretty soon, gargoyles was just regarded as kind of a disappointment by Disney for, 25 years.
And yet, this episode brings in some characters from the season that must not be named.
Well, we introduced the characters here. They reused them later. Yeah. Did Roddy do the voice of Proteus in that Goliath Chronicles episode?
Yes, he did.
Well, that's good at least. We had. This is an episode that we actually developed the New Olympians prior to Gargoyles. It was an idea from Bob Klein, who ended up directing this episode. And Bob and I developed it, and we had a whole pitch for the New Olympians, and it didn't sell. And then Gargoyles went, and we got these sort of marching orders about the action universe, and we're like, okay, this feels like it fits. We've sort of done Odin and the Norse god side of things. Let's deal with the Greek god side of things, but let's do a different take on it. So these are sort of the descendants of the sort of gods and monsters of Greek mythology. It's very Kirby influenced. The whole secret island of godlike characters is right out of the Eternals or the Inhumans or the New Gods kind of Kirby style stuff. But we tried to make it feel fresh, and I was happy with it. The animation is a little inconsistent, not always terrific, but I like how the story plays out, and we were also very conscious that it was a backdoor pilot, and we didn't want to scoop too much of what the show was going to be. So you've got Taurus and Talus in there, who are 2 of the 4 leads, and the other 2, Terry, Chung, and Sphinx, we didn't show at all because we wanted that's the sort of Romeo and Juliet story that we had in mind, that Terry sort of shipwrecks on this island and falls in love with one of the new Olympians, Sphinx. And we wanted that to feel fresh when and if it came. So there were a bunch of other characters that we had in mind, some of which get teased here, Chiron and Helios and Echidna and others. But there were also things we held back in reserve. There was a character called Jove and Medusa and other characters. And so we didn't want to blow the whole wad, so to speak, on this backdoor pilot, but we wanted to give enough of a flavor of it that the audience would be intrigued and want to see more.
It's interesting to me that you felt that the animation was inconsistent, because to me, one of the things I like the most about it, beyond Roddy's work, is that when Proteus becomes the other characters, you really see a shift visually in those characters when they're actually him, but it's very subtle, and I really liked that.
There's some good boarding in there, and some of that boarding is reflected in the animation, and then there are moments when you're just like, ooh, that shot's painful. But also, I'm a fairly I have the weird position of being both incredibly fond of these episodes, but also very aware of every little mistake we made, and so I'm sort of on both sides of that fence. We've certainly had episodes with stronger animation, and God knows we've had episodes with way weaker animation. This was somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of cool stuff in it visually. And
this one was Sunwoo.
Yeah, so this was early days at Sunwoo, and it's pretty good. It's just, there are moments that are a little cringy for me, but I think there's a lot that comes out good. I wish. I mean, just get some of the things I don't like about it out of the way, I guess. When you're dealing with an entire island of creatures, it's tough to design enough of them that look cool and that are thematically correct, and not just, I think we borrowed a few Oberon's children and just stuck them in there kind of thing. And I know the flip side is when we get to The Gathering Part 1 and we're showing a bunch of Oberon's children, there are clearly a few new Olympians that were just sort of grabbed and thrown in also. Because, only so many hours in the day and we're on a brutal production schedule. But so there's that. I also think that, and this I blame Jamie for, from Wallace standpoint,
I heard that.
We just you hear the same three voices saying the same things over and over.
You hear, especially Keith's. You hear Keith's for sure.
They didn't need to loop it. I didn't post it.
Yeah. Jamie froze up again. Halfway through a sentence. Halfway through to making any excuses, he freezes.
He'll be back. And
but otherwise, there's a lot I love about the episode. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think that I think Roddy's work is tons of fun in this.
That's one of the things I remember, like, when I think back when I first watched this episode. Like, it's got a great guest cast already. Like, I'm like, oh, hey, Dorn, there's Dorn again. We're doing like that kind of thing, but it got to Roddy and like just the record scratch kind of thing. Like, I just was like, is that who I think that is? So, like, when I walked away, when it was all over with, I was like, that's a backdoor pilot, and that was Roddy McDowell.
Jamie's back just in time to talk about the guest cast.
I have no idea how much you guys heard. Yeah, this thing keeps freezing. I don't know what's going on.
It's because you're in space right now.
That's what it is, yeah.
Hear you scream.
All right, so again, we mentioned the Wizcast. We'll talk about Roddy last, but we have Michael Dorn back as Taurus. Who's previously been Coldstone, and We've talking about him a lot, but I thought bringing him back here, despite the fact that he sounds exactly the same, he was perfect for that character.
He sounds entirely different. He's the man of 1,001 voice.
I suppose Frank Welker's in this episode too.
Frank Welker is in this episode.
We've also got Dorian Harewood as both Boreas and Talos.
Dorian was great.
Love me some Dorian.
And I'm not too familiar with her work outside of this, but Charity James as a kid, and I thought she was really good, but I'm not too familiar with her work. Jen, are you familiar with her work?
Yeah, she typically doesn't do a lot in this genre. I mean, maybe she's done some video games since then, but she was primarily known for comedy. She had a lot of edgy energy, which served her well.
Someone who I know Jen definitely knows well, and so do I. Rob Paulson as Helios. Let's talk a little bit about Rob Paulson. What can we say? Where do I start? He's done so much. Jen, who comes to mind first when you think of Rob Paulson?
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Jamaica, Peru.
Yakko. And he was Pinky also, both on Animaniacs.
Point.
He was Raphael on the original Ninja Turtles cartoon. I remember he was a title character on Mighty Max, co-starring with Tony Jay and the late Richard Mole and Tim Curry. So yeah, that's a stellar cast right there. He's done. I mean, what hasn't he done? He hosts a really cool podcast about voice acting, I believe.
Yeah, he and Mo together do one. He and Maurice LaMarche, Pinky and the Brain.
Awesome. I was a huge fan of Pinky and the Brain. Still am a huge fan of Pinky and the Brain.
And Roddy was Snowball on that.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Love that.
So that was spawned from Maurice just Touretting those Orson Welles outtakes, just like on a loop, constant. It was severe ignorance, whatever it is, I can't give it to you. Just like, and they made a show about it.
And it worked.
There's no way you can deliver a sentence like that in English and have it possibly make sense. You didn't say it, he said it. Your friend. I've seen that. I've heard that tape many times. But, and of course, we have Roddy McDowell as motherfucking Proteus. Okay, that's the dragon style, so just fucking Proteus.
I'm going to see you outside. When you know that kid.
Probably the darkest character we've come across so far.
In the entire series.
And he's in that whole, like, Hannibal Lecter kind of cell. And, you're like, what's he doing behind there? I will say, I've been to the archives working on the Roddy McDowell book. He kept every piece of paper that he ever touched. And it's all at Boston University now. And I've seen scripts. I was going to lie. But I won't lie. I did not see the script for Gargoyles with notes on it because I wasn't looking for it. But, because this was all from last year. But even his animation scripts, he would have such detailed notes of things that he wanted to do with it or things that he thought that would make the performance different here or there, or this is where this is it, and this is where he should do this. He really took all of this very, very seriously.
Yeah, and I can tell you that when you find that script, you will find those notes, because he actually came to me before the recording, and I just had to look through a few things that he wanted to try.
Yeah,
very
he was very, very, very specific about how he liked to work. And part of it had to do with giving himself freedom. So if he did all of that homework and had this thing that kind of rooted him to what it was that he was playing, then he felt like, well, if the voice director, if somebody says, can you go that way? Then he feels really free to go any which way because he feels like he's got that root to the character.
Yeah, it's as if he knew how to act. It's as if
it's
in direction.
The thing about it, though, is that he had to learn how to act when he became an adult.
Yes, the father's little kid. That's a different thing.
He started a completely different thing, and he really, I mean, it was really amazing to me and courageous that at the start of the 50s, he left Hollywood where he was still earning a good living, but making kind of crap movies. And he went to New York and he studied. He used Montgomery Clift was his friend, and got to know some different coaches, and really developed a technique as an adult that would serve him for the rest of his career. But he understood that he could not keep relying on what worked when he was a kid.
Yeah, as a kid, you just have to be cute, grow into your look, hit your mark.
I mean,
but didn't he win a Tony? Speaking of his,
he did win a Tony in 1959 for this is the sort of 6 degrees of Roddy McDowall. So he wins a Tony starring on Broadway with Rex Harrison. Then the next thing he does on Broadway is starring with Richard Burton. And then the next thing he does is starring with both of them in Cleopatra. And, it's just like the connections go. I mean, Ronald Neame, who directed him in The Poseidon Adventure in 1972.
Also a great movie.
Was the cinematographer of a movie that Roddy McDowall made in 1938 in England when he was a child. And you see these connections that go through decades and decades of people that, oh yeah, I remember you from 1938.
But he literally, it was like a 70-year career, so right?
It's 60 years, yeah. I mean, it would have been longer, but he didn't live past 70. So, I think when you look at something like his ability to come in and just sort of nail this character with not a lot of lines, Proteus is not the one who speaks the most in this episode, but it's that incredible wealth of experience that I think makes it just pop with that one line, with 2 lines, you sort of get this whole sense of a person, and it's and he draws you in because it's exciting,
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things that really struck me. One is that we even were allowed to say, what happened to your father? Oh, that's right, I murdered him. We actually got to use the word murdered, and I was like, wow, I'd forgotten that. I was shocked we got away with it, but I love his reading of it. But the other thing is, of course, this was a group recording. So Roddy speaks his lines as Proteus and also later as the Cyclops. But what that does is it also gives Sally, Keith, and Michael all an opportunity to see how Roddy's doing it, so that when they're playing Proteus in their various, Proteus's various guises as Elisa and Goliath and Taurus, or Taurus's father, they're all doing Roddy.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Just read and show them.
I mean, there really are. There's so many layers going on. I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roddy didn't suck, for sure.
He did not suck. He definitely did not suck.
And when I say fantastic, I mean the whole episode. I don't mean just Roddy. I mean it's a fantastic episode of animated television. It really is.
Nice. It really is, and it's one that's really grown on me over the years. But I do have a question. We've talked about how this is a backdoor pilot. So, okay, we've got Taurus, we've got Boreas and Talos, we've got Echidna, Helios, and Proteus, and a couple of characters are left out. But in a sense, you're not just casting guest stars for Gargoyles, you're also potentially casting an entire new show, assuming that gets picked up. So, Greg and Jamie, I'm curious, did you have that in mind when you were working this one out? Because that's got to come with a different kind of pressure to it than just casting guest star for Gargoyles.
Instead of pressure, for me, it was freedom. It's like, cool, I can just pick. I don't have to do 100 auditions for each of these guys. Okay, who do I want to be? Okay, I want Dorian. I want, Rob. People who are just great and automatic. And Roddy, for that matter, he shoots arrows. You say.
Well, I don't know if you remember, Jamie, but we recorded this twice.
We did.
I didn't know that.
We actually had different actors playing Proteus and Taurus and Talus
Taurus, I remember.
originally.
I remember Taurus being someone else, but I don't remember the other.
These are all really talented actors, and they just weren't right. And we weren't getting what we thought we'd get out of them, and we stepped back and said, we need to recast these. And I don't know if that, I don't even feel that was like, oh, because we had extra pressure because we thought of this as a backdoor pilot. I just feel in terms, just from a Gargoyle standpoint, it wasn't playing.
I think I remember one. I remember the Taurian. My sense on that one was that, because the word was out on the show for a long time, when everyone wanted to do it, and that particular actor, I think, was enamored.
The actor we got to play Proteus is a guy I worked with later on Young Justice, and he was fantastic in Young Justice, but couldn't get what we needed out of him. And so we brought Michael Dorn in. We asked Dorian to also play Talus because the actor who played Talus wasn't, which seems ridiculous because it's a robot, but the actor playing Talus wasn't giving us what we needed, and the actors playing Taurus and Proteus weren't either. So we came back with Roddy and Michael.
Now, how did that affect? You guys were on a tight schedule, so how much more pressure was that there?
And
it set us back a week. I mean, only a week, but it set us back a week, and so you have to catch up later. I mean, what you have for the storyboard artists is you've got, in essence, a scratch track using the actors who we were replacing. But, this was before, by only losing a week, it was long before our timing directors got in and would have to really lock in the timing of the dialogue or anything like that. So we had a little bit of flexibility, not a lot. But I think that I feel like there were 2 episodes that this happened on across the whole. Maybe we also have this problem on the Not Solani episode. What was that one called?
Heritage.
I feel like we had a little bit of problem with some actors on Heritage and had to go. We had this one, and then on Bushido, which is still coming out. That one we fixed in the studio by recasting. Like, among the actors we had, they were all great, but we just switched who they were playing on the spot, and it ended up working out terrific. But again, sometimes you have to do these things because it isn't singing, and then of course, Roddy comes in, and it's exactly what we were hoping for and more. And Michael Dorn comes in, and of course, Michael had played Cold Stone for us already, and this character has a lot in common with Worf, so you kind of knew you were going to get what we needed out of Dorn from this one, and we did. We got it. But it was a surprise that the other 3 actors, and Dorian playing 2 parts instead of just Boreas. He was great as Boreas. The guy we had playing Talus wasn't working, but we gave Talus also to Dorian, and he was terrific. I fixed it. All of a sudden, it was all gelling, and it all felt like it worked. And the notion of going forward with a cast led by Michael Dorn and Dorian Harewood felt really good to us. And then we'd have 2 younger actors as our sort of male and female ingenues, so to speak, our Romeo and Juliet. But we would cast if the show got to go forward. And then Roddy, of course, the plan was that Proteus was the big villain of our spin-off series. So Roddy would have been back as well, and was, in fact, I guess I'd forgotten this, Greg, until you mentioned it. Roddy was, or Jennifer mentioned it, was back in Goliath Chronicles. Of course, by then I wasn't on the show anymore. But
that actually confused
he was a
me.
great villain. So why wouldn't you bring him back?
That actually confused me when I was doing my research, and I was going, wait, he's playing the same character called the same name, but it's in a different show. And what the hell? Because you're going through a lot of data to try to figure out what was what, and I was like, did I make a mistake? Is he the right name? And anyway.
And speaking of actors who would have been in this spinoff, you already had one who wasn't in this episode who has already been cast, because I believe Xanatos is going to be a big part of that spinoff.
Yeah, he was. He was going to be, someone. I know this will come as a shock to Xanatos fans, but he was going to be someone who tries to exploit the new Olympics. So yeah, I mean, obviously Xanatos wasn't part of the original New Olympian, the pre-Gargoyles New Olympian development, but we redid the pitch. It was 90% the same, but we redid the pitch and added Xanatos as a major villain because we felt that he was a big draw, and he would have been a villain, maybe overstating it, but certainly an antagonist, and certainly someone they'd have to deal with, because the whole idea was that, so in this episode, Elisa and the Gargoyles land on New Olympus in the pilot of the, or what would have been the pilot of the spinoff. Terry Chung, who's another Gargoyles character, who we've seen more of in the comics now, but not in the original TV show. Terry is this guy who graduates early from MIT because he's so brilliant, and then decides he wants to sail around the world by himself, which was something that people were doing in the 90s, believe it or not. Seems kind of nuts to me, but people were doing that. And so Terry decides to, and he winds up shipwrecking on New Olympus. And because of their experience with Elisa, the feeling is this is just going to keep happening. It's time for us to announce our presence to the world. So the New Olympians show up in front of the United Nations building in Manhattan with all their technology and all their quote unquote monstrousness. And the three sort of ambassadors that are sent are Taurus, because he's head of security. So Boreas feels like Taurus will keep New Olympus's security foremost in mind. And Talus, who's the only entity there who actually has experience dealing with humans. It's 2,000-year-old experience, but still, he used to deal with humans 2,000 years ago. And then you've got Sphinx, who's sent because she's already sort of in this relationship with Terry. And Terry's mother is a UN ambassador. And so you have this sort of clash of cultures in a way that we weren't at the time doing on Gargoyles. I've done it a little since in the comics, but in the series, the Gargoyles were sort of like the worst kept secret in Manhattan, but they were still kind of a secret. This was not going to be a secret. This was going to be, boom, they show up right in front of the United Nations and we're here. You got to deal with us. And again, Xanatos would be like, oh, this is interesting. And so the action, some of it would be on New Olympus, but most of it would be, in Washington, D.C. or in New York or whatever, as the world starts to deal with the fact that there's this whole other secret or formerly secret race of beings that to most humans appear to be monsters.
I feel like it sets up a situation where both sides are going to be antagonistic and bigoted toward the other.
Yeah. I mean, we had different factions at New Olympus. There's the faction that wants to reach out and wants to befriend humans. There was the faction that Echidna sort of represents in this episode of people who, of New Olympians who are just, are so fearful of the humans of legend and are so sure that if we reveal ourselves, they'll destroy us. And so we better destroy them first kind of thing. And then we had another faction led by a character, Jove, who does not appear in this episode, whose, great-great-grandfather or something like that was Zeus, and Jupiter was his grandfather. And so from his point of view, it's like, these humans, we used to be gods to them. I like that arrangement. How do we get that going again? And so, it's all these sort of permutations of how do different characters on both sides respond? How do different humans respond to them? Again, Xanatos is all for the new Olympians because he sees opportunity there. And so how do you negotiate? How do you, I don't just mean scenes of people literally negotiating, but I mean, how do you navigate this huge cross-cultural event?
If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Always. Well, Jenny, you brought it up. The central theme of this episode is prejudice, and Elisa faces prejudice firsthand, directly. And I will admit, watching it this time, I think, okay, considering her own racial heritage, I doubt it's the first time, maybe not on this level, but she had to face this before. But this is just, it's brutal to watch. It's very real.
There's a line where they're like, we're locking Elisa up for her safety.
For safety, yeah.
And it reminded me of like a discussion I had with my grandmother about the Japanese internment camps, where that's how they played it up to them during World War II, that it was keeping them safe too.
Right.
So that line, like, definitely hit me.
Yeah.
Well,
Major.
I was just going to say, and the thing about it is that part of what makes it so powerful is that on the one hand, it's insidious, and on the other hand, it's actually kind of true.
True.
So it's both things at once, which makes it that much more powerful.
I think there's a lot of justification there. And of course, the flip for it, which wasn't subtle, we weren't trying to be subtle, is that usually it's the gargoyles who face prejudice among the humans. And here at the beginning of the episode, Elisa's like, oh, you guys better hide because we don't know how they're going to react when they see you. Gargoyles, they're like, oh, yeah, hi, you're a gargoyle. But this human, put her in chains, literally put her in chains. And in a stadium, to show how we deal with her. And then, as soon as there's trouble, Taurus's attitude, which,
I don't care who
subtly changes over the course of the episode, but his initial thing is, Angela's like, she didn't start this. And Taurus is like, I don't care who started it, I know who caused it. And it's sort of like, hey, we're going to blame the victim here because the victim's different. The victim's other, and we don't like other. And it's
easier to take her out of the equation than to get everybody else to be nice.
Right. And, there are moments for Taurus that I like, Helios is the one who threw that big fireball at the window. Helios is one of Taurus's deputies. And it's sort of like Taurus comes out, he seems to be ignoring Elisa, but he comes out, sends everyone home, but specifically says to Helios, you do shit like that again and you're out of a job. And I also think it's interesting, Angela's point of view, like Goliath is trying to be reasonable, figuring like, look, we can do, initially his feeling is we can do more to get Elisa out, to get Elisa safe with diplomacy. Boreas seems a reasonable man. He'll see that she's not a threat, blah, 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 blah. Whereas Angela is just outraged because Angela comes from this idyllic sort of summertime land of Avalon. And it's like, this is just flat out unfair. And she's not experienced that kind of prejudice because she lived only with other gargoyles and 3 humans who, in essence, parented them. So there was no conflict until, the Archmage showed up and started killing everybody. But I mean, she's literally never experienced this kind of prejudice until the world tour. And so this she just finds outrageous. And so she's the one who's actually much more aggressive about this than Goliath until Goliath finally sort of says, okay, that's the last straw.
Yeah. On that note, I was watching and listening to Angela in this and the way that Bridget delivered her lines and that outrage, and I'm thinking I could see Angela as a political activist at this point, going on marches, getting herself involved with things, just the way she's speaking and behaving in this episode. I just saw that and I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
I think that's in her.
Berkeley.
Pardon? What was that?
Nope. Every time we don't want Jamie to say something, he gets out.
I until Jamie gets back, I think you're right, Greg. I mean, when we made this episode, Erin, my daughter, was very, very tiny. And did we lose? We got Jamie back, and then we lost Jennifer.
She'll be back.
But even as a little child, Erin just had this intense sense of justice and fairness, and even today, she's, as Sam knows, is
she's absolutely like the idea of something being unfair. Just it kind of enrages her, and she's not a person who gets enraged,
right?
But that enrages her.
Angela's that kind of kid, that the world should be fair. It should be just. And so I mean, I can see that. Obviously, Angela's writing in 1995 wasn't inspired by Erin, who was less than 2 years old. But in hindsight, I see a lot of Erin and Angela, or vice versa. I'm not sure which, but it definitely strikes me.
And Jennifer's back.
Just because you can't see me doesn't mean I'm not here.
Nice. We're glad you're here. And
okay, well, now that everybody's had a problem with object permanence,
it's not. I haven't had my turn yet. But so, Jen, what do you think of the observation of Angela being almost like a political activist in this?
No, very she's just like, this is obviously not good. This is not cool. But that whole previously on Gargoyles, where you see gargoyles being treated badly, she didn't experience any of that.
Yeah.
So that and then, they've been bopping around the globe just finding other weirdos like them, and it's the normal weirdos, but these weirdos are not the normal weirdos. And she's not happy with it at all. And she thinks that I'm a very good friend with Elisa now. And to see her friend treated like this, she's not having it. She does not like it.
Yeah, righteous indignation.
Yeah, Jamie, you were saying something about this topic before you blinked out for a little bit.
I have no idea what I was saying.
Yeah, we were
something good, I'm sure, but
it was hilarious and well thought out.
Every time I try to say something nice about Greg, the computer just shuts down.
Anyway, and there's different forms of bigotry throughout this. I mean, Taurus is narrow-minded until he comes around. Boreas is well-meaning, but wrong. Talos was a robot. He's pragmatic, but uncaring. And ironically, the one who's the least prejudiced throughout this episode is fucking Proteus.
Yeah, I don't think Taurus is narrow-minded so much as he is single-minded.
Well, and I don't know that you can say that someone who wants to kill everyone with equal opportunity lacks prejudice. I think, it's like, I mean, in a funny kind of a way you could go there, but,
Look, just because I want to blow up the entire island and everybody on it doesn't mean I have hatred in my heart.
No.
More for one person than the other.
No.
I hate them all equally.
Equal opportunity.
He's really the hero of the story.
On that note, we had a note we touched on it a little bit, but I think, and this has been talked about in the fandom for years, he's probably the single most outright evil character we've encountered in the series so far.
He's dark.
Yeah.
So dark.
Well, and he seems to like it's like he can use what he determines are kind of the weaknesses of a character to like make his impression of them seem even more realistic. Does that make sense?
It does, even if there are moments where he clearly doesn't have time to study them. Because I love
because we want to believe the bad side over someone's good side.
Although I do like his quote unquote performance as Goliath. Who is that guy?
I mean, you've got time to get the shape down. You've got time to get the voice down. All the details, you're going to have to wing it,
Yeah.
No, he's fun, and he revels in his evil. He's dark, but he's just fun to watch, and
he loves it.
Listen to.
There's kind of a I think you could actually draw a weird straight line from that character to one of his first Shakespearean characters that Roddy did, which was Ariel in The Tempest. And he was actually the first man that played Ariel in quite a while, because it was like Peter Pan. You always had women doing it. And the performance that he gave had a kind of weird, evil tinge to it. Like it was very kind of weird and creepy, and it wasn't just sort of like sprightly and whatever. And I kept thinking of that performance because there's a tape of it, and when I was listening to Proteus, I kept going, this is kind of like Ariel in a weird way. I mean, not the character, but the gestalt of the whole.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I do like how Elisa eventually sees through him when she realizes it's daylight, he's not sewing, and he comes up with a very weak excuse. It really does not match gargoyle biology at all. But I almost feel like it's something a fan could buy into for a moment.
For a moment. Yeah, for a moment.
Jen,
I was honestly waiting for it. Like, she's going to figure out that the sun's up. And that was definitely, but I expected, again, 30 years ago, I'm trying to recall correctly, but I think I was expecting her to confront him, not be like, great idea, I'll be over here, work a plan underneath his plan. And I like how that idea is much more Lisa. So.
And like I was saying, probably the most evil character we've had so far. Some people might say Thalog, but I don't think Thalog's going to go and fucking blow up the entire island like that, because what would be there for him to exploit later? This is just carnage.
But he's having fun. He enjoys himself.
Don't yuck his yum. What are you trying to do?
And he's not a villain, just asking.
And everyone else does such a good job playing him. We've already talked about that, and I like his scene where he's just going.
Nailed it. I think Keith nailed him the best. Like, you can still hear the Roddy underneath Keith's performance for sure.
That guy.
No, I know Keith, and he is a little like Roddy underneath all of that. In the best sense possible.
But Keith, maybe, yeah. Yes, definitely.
Now, I will say, I love when he's in the form of Taurus, and Michael Dorn does it really well too, and he has his little interaction with Talos, and I must insist you stop now. Okay. And then just smashes him through the back. It's just so fun.
I was very sad about Talos.
They can fix him.
Oh, but not if he explodes into a million pieces and the whole island's blown up. You can't fix him then.
Oh, that's true.
A lot of solder and super glue.
So much.
Super glue the entire island. And duct tape. Don't forget the duct tape.
Duct tape.
Although knowing
bubblegum
Proteus, he's probably got plenty of experience with duct tape.
I liked the animations for him switching. I thought that
I
was
did
pretty
too.
cool. I like because instead of just melting into one to the other, it was kind of like blah, 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 and then he was someone new, and I liked that.
Well, who can
They were like
resist a
tentacles.
giant cyclops? Who can resist a giant cyclops?
Before Jamie
It also makes
freezes
me
up,
wonder,
yeah.
The form that we think of as Proteus's true form, like
Is that?
how true is even that? Because it's not like like you said, he's not just sort of melting from one character to another. He's going all blobby before he, sort of
Settles
back in.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if that Proteus form is just something he's chosen, to represent him. But I don't think we know what he really looks like, which interests me.
And for the spinoff, I just think about, you look at this character, the shape shifting, and if he presumably escapes and comes to our world, the amount of damage this guy could potentially cause. There's endless storytelling possibilities there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with him and Xanatos as those two antagonists, that would have been so.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be fun. I'd still love to do a New Olympians comic, just, hey, let's do this spinoff. When I did the comics, I made Terry, who was supposed to be in the spinoff, somewhere around 1920. I forget. I've got it written down somewhere, but, I made him younger. He's more like, 10 or 12 years old. So that would put New Olympians a little further into the Gargoyles' future, not 1997, and more like, I don't know, the far future of 2003 or something, but it'd be great to be able to play in that playground. Because again, I just think the concepts are a lot of fun and characters are a lot of fun, and how it intersects with the Gargoyles universe does interest me. And I think it would be great.
And Roddy, it's just a perfect, classic, quintessential arch villain. But he does his own twist. Like there's a line, well, they really don't like you very much, do they? And that would be the sort of normal way. But he says, they really don't like you very much, do they? Completely opposite. It's awesome. It's a perfect
It just
example.
makes him seem like he's really just enjoying the show,
He's like giddy. Ooh, they really don't like you.
Something happened to his father. What was it? Oh, yes, I remember. I murdered him. I'll be honest. I probably shouldn't admit how many times over the last 30 years I've just randomly quoted that line just because of its delivery.
Well, and I mean, I've read hundreds, probably thousands of letters that this man wrote in his lifetime and that people wrote to him, from people like Noel Coward, from people like Laurence Olivier, from, all of these people. They all shared the same quality, which is that if they had been in that room that day recording this, they would have had a wonderful time. And, that's really what made, I think, all of this work for Roddy for 60 years. He loved it. He loved these characters that he would play. He loved the experience of everyone being in that room together and recording. It really is his legacy. And the fact that in the year 2025, people would talk about this on something called a podcast, which I'm sure existed when he was still alive. I think he would just be so thrilled and touched that that all this work matters to people still.
Yeah, and he really just exuded that in the room. He was just a sweet guy. He was, rank and file. Let's get some work done. And he could have floated in and been haughtier than all. And he just wasn't.
That was just never his. That was never what he wanted to be. And part of what I'm working on in writing a book about him is kind of looking at, well, how did he define himself? And what choices did he make in terms of how he wanted to interact with his colleagues, with the world, with his friends? And he really, huh? Oh, you froze. I'm not sure what the question was, but I would just say that he chose to be a force for something positive, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to come into interactions with a sense of win-win, and with a sense that he could come in and maybe make something a little bit better. That for that moment, maybe contribute a little something to what everyone's doing that just makes the world a little better for a second or two. And I think that's how he really looked at life.
Jamie, you had a
What
question?
were you saying, Jamie?
I was saying I wanted you to answer that question. You said, the way you introduced it, you said.
I think I did answer it in the end.
I think, yes, yeah.
Something like that.
I think I did. But, and when you've got a career like him and the kinds of contacts he had and the kind of people that he worked with, I think it would be very, very easy to be above all of this nonsense, this children's cartoon, and I'm just doing it for money or whatever. I mean, whatever bullshit that, that other people would sort of bring in the room at times. And that was just never what he wanted to be. And it's never what he wanted to represent. He believed in the creative work of artists coming together. He believed in it more than he believed, I think, in just about anything else in his life. And, he wanted to be somebody who supported that for the work that's being done and for all of the people that are there involved doing it. If he could make that better for Michael Dorn, if he could make that better for Dorian Harewood, if he just, that's what he wanted. That made him feel that all of it matters.
What you've just said, that's a feeling I often get from many of the cast members of the show. Even for some who say that voice acting isn't their preferred form of acting, they still brought that integrity and that love to this show and the characters they played. I've never had a bad experience with anyone I've ever met who worked on this show, ever. I mean, it's they've always been positive encounters.
You're welcome.
Love you, Jamie.
Except for Jamie.
Oh, I love Jamie.
Jamie, I don't even know you, and I already know that it's except for Jamie, right? I know that.
I like troublemakers, so I like Jamie.
I'm consistent 100% on the other side of the spectrum.
All right. Before we begin wrapping things up, does anyone have any final thoughts on this episode? Jamie, we'll start with you before you freeze up again.
Good episode. Like Roddy. Great, just quintessential classic villain. But having fun. He loves his work.
Roddy and Proteus both love their work.
Yes, I was talking about Proteus, but yes, Roddy too.
Sam, do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
Just, it really touches me so much that he is so beloved to all of you. And, I've come to know him, very well in this past year that I've been looking at his life. And I think he would just be really, really touched that you remember him this way.
Jen, do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
It was just a wonderful thing that he just said. This episode, I liked the lesson it was teaching us, and I really would have loved to have watched New Olympians.
Me too. Before we start with Greg and his final thoughts in the episode.
No, you don't get a chance, Greg.
You'll get your chance. You'll get your chance. Like I said throughout this is an episode that grew a lot on me over the years, and I'm going to commit a little bit of blasphemy. When this first aired, and looking back, I must have been having a terrible day, and maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset for the very naked prejudices. And I remember this at the time being the first episode I disliked, and at the time I didn't know why, because it's really grown on me over the years. I really like it a lot now, and it's a powerful episode. It goes to some pretty uncomfortable places in some fun ways with villains like Proteus, and maybe the time I was just waiting for them to get back to New York, maybe the time I was just having a bad day, but there was also a time when I would say that when it comes to the spin-offs, that I never have a top choice. At any given time, any one of the proposed spin-offs is the top choice for ones I want to see. New Olympians never was, but after this conversation, I'm thinking, you know what? There's going to be times when maybe it will be the top choice. Greg, any final thoughts on this episode?
A lot of thoughts.
Well, I have a final thought about Sky Chariots, but just to address
They're
that,
cool.
I mean, people ask me, well, what do you want to do the most? You know, which spinoff do you want to do? And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. You know, it's not up to me. I can pitch these things. Even now with the comics, you know, Frank Parr comes to me and says, hey, let's do Demona. And I have to pitch that to Dynamite and Disney and get permission for that. But the point is that these are all stories that someday I'd like to have a chance to tell. And I think there are a lot of great New Olympian stories that I think would be really terrific to bring into the canon and that kind of thing. My sort of final thought, just because no one's mentioned it, we have these sky chariots flying around, and I found them. They gave off so much smog. It seemed like for a society as advanced as the New Olympians, they need to work on their catalytic converters for those sky chariots.
They need a Green New
Maybe
Deal.
it was just vapor, like a natural.
Yeah, it was a little brown.
Dusty
Yeah.
vapor.
Oh,
But I did think it was funny. There's this moment. So Elisa's flying the sky chariot, and Helios is trying to get her, or Taurus. I forget which one. And she goes, "You'll have to do better than that." I'm like, was that? I'm sitting there going, that must have been a self-referential moment to when the robot Macbeth was flying around in his sky cycle.
I always thought it was the way she says it, the way she delivers the line.
And then I thought, well, Elisa probably heard. And then I'm like, wait, Elisa wasn't there, right?
She was there the last time for part of it. Yeah, she was there for part of it.
Okay, great. All right, so that makes sense. She's just, the sky chariot made her think of Macbeth's sky thing, and so she, in universe, she's like, I'm going to quote the Macbeth robot. And I thought that
explains why she looks like she's having such a good time saying.
I mean, the end of that episode is so action Elisa. It's so much fun. She's like doing these flying kicks and all sorts of stuff, and it's just sort of like it's always fun to let Elisa cut loose too, because oftentimes she's overshadowed a bit by the gargoyles. But this is one where no. Action Elisa, Kieran, I think rather gently takes the stone Bronx and sort of pushes him off him, because to Kieran, gargoyles are cool. They're fine. It's humans that are the problem. And then that, stone Angela gets the sort of bolo wrap around her, and Goliath is frozen in stone in the cell. So it's all on Elisa to fix, and she's got to get Taurus to help her.
How cool are those bolos, by the way? Just let's gloss over it.
Yeah.
Bolos.
There's a lot of cool technology and stuff, just almost incidentally in the episode, which I thought was kind of cool. And I'm not bringing that up like it's some big major thing about the episode. It's just, it's fun, and we haven't talked about it, so I thought I'd throw that in.
All right. No other final thoughts, Greg?
Not yet.
Not yet. We'll think of them later. We always do. But no, it was a good episode. A lot to say about prejudice, which unfortunately we as a people need to keep having this said to us over and over, probably until the heat death of the universe. But no, very good episode. Would have probably made a great show, and maybe someday a great comic. Fingers crossed. We'll see. And this is going to be coming out on June 13th. So does anyone have anything they want to promote? Sam?
Yes, I do want to promote Cesar Romero, The Joker is Wild, in bookstores. If this is, it'll be a month and a half. There are pre-orders that you can do on Amazon right now.
We'll link to it. Jamie, do you have anything you want to promote?
You would like to promote New Internet?
He's frozen again, folks. There he is. He's back.
I have no idea.
Jamie, would you like to promote anything? June 13th, this is coming out.
Promote anything? Yeah, no, the movie that I have an NDA on. It's going to be awesome.
Every time we speak to you,
Can't
there's
wait.
an NDA.
Almost everything is.
That's
though.
his life.
Yes. Yes. All right. Greg, June 13th, anything you would like to promote?
I'm pretty sure by now Demona #1 will be out, written by me, penciled and ink by Frank Parr. It's a brutal historical fiction issue of Demona coming up against the Canmore clan, and I hope everyone rushes out to pick it up. I think Frank's work on it is gorgeous, just
It's
truly
good.
gorgeous, and colors by Robbie Bavard, and they look fantastic. They are finishing up issue 2 now, and I am just finishing the script to issue 3. And I think it's just going to be a great series. So Gargoyles Demona. And if you haven't picked it up, the last issue of the Spectacular Spider-Man came out in May. So 15 issues total, and the second trade for Spectacular Spider-Man collecting issues 6 through 10 came out. So it'd be great. Had a great time doing that book, and I think it's well worthwhile. And I urge you all to pick it up.
Nice.
Well, if that's it, I'm going to thank everyone for everything. Jamie, thank you for coming back on. We liked talking to you when technology allowed us to talk to you. So we'll definitely have to have you on again, and hopefully technology will cooperate.
Yeah, but I'm not cranky enough already.
Sam, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming on. I'm definitely going to buy your books, plural.
Yes,
Greg, thank you for everything you do. As always, thank you for constantly coming on the show and having these discussions with us about this wonderful show. Jennifer, thank you for everything. Everything.
For being
up. Yes, thank you for that. Whatever that was. And
crazy.
thank you for just putting up with me. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. Without you, there is no show. Thank you for your continued support. And tune in next time as we head down to Guatemala for The Green.
Thank you for listening to Voices from the Eyrie, a Gargoyles podcast, powered by the Spidey Dude Radio Network, located at spidey-dude.com. If you like this show, then please listen to Spectacular Radio, based on the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series, which features some familiar voices. You can also find these great podcasts: Clone Saga Chronicles, Make Mine Mayday, Amazing Spider-Man Classics, the Sal Buscema Podcast, and Books of X. All of this and more on the Spidey Dude Radio Network. And please follow us on Twitter at From Eyrie. That's From EYRIE. And join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Spidey Dude Network for more exclusive content. Thank you.
He's right, of course. Something happened to his father. Oh, yes. I remember. I murdered him.